Good morning, my name's Teresa, the owner of New Forest Sewing Studio. If you've watched our other videos you'll know by now, but if you haven't, we do a monthly make and do a sew along with it. So this month for August, coming up, we are going to make the Fiore Skirt pattern by Closet Core Patterns. It's rated a beginner pattern. So yeah, I thought that would be nice to show for the option for people. So I'm going to make the wrapped version there, the pocket in the side. There's the line drawings, you've got several options, but as I say, I'm going to make view B, so I'm putting that one there with the wrap. Okay, I'm going to make it in our linen viscose fabric, Riviera linen viscose. It's a Fabric Godmother fabric, so it's got a little bit of drape, having the viscose with it, with a linen texture to it, so I think that'll be nice. So the first thing it wants us to do is apply your interfacing, so that's to your waistband, to your facing pieces down the fronts of the skirt, and also to your pocket edge, but it does have specific pattern pieces for the interfacing, so like the pocket edge piece, just reach that, the pocket edge piece here, it has a specific piece to cut for your interfacing, and that's where you need to attach it to, so it's just iron-on interfacing, but it's quite good. So because it's an asymmetrical pattern, it's a lot of it's cut out on the single layer of fabric, but it does tell you on the pattern pieces, and again with the interfacing, which way up to have it, which way up to have your fabric, and things. So your fabric, you cut your pattern pieces, you cut with the right side up, and the interfacing, it either tells you to cut it with the glue side up or the glue side down. So that's really helpful when you've got single asymmetrical pieces. So I thought that was good about the pattern. So the first thing it wants me to do is to stitch some stay stitching, so quite a bit of stay stitching. Right, so it wants you to stay stitch up and around here, okay, so that's because these side seams are slightly on the bias, so that's just to prevent any stretch, and it wants us to do around both sides of the skirt. As I say, both C and D of the skirt piece on the wrap one are different because of the wrap. So I'm going to go and stay stitch these side seams and around the top, but it wants you to do it in the direction of the arrows there, but that's quite well explained. Okay, so I'm going to go and do that first, and then we'll move on to attaching the pocket. Okay, so then so we've stay stitched around there. I'll try and show you, but it's in a dark thread, dark fabric, but you're just going to stitch around, just a stitch, 1.3 centimetres in, so your seam allowance is 1.5, so you're just stitching within the seam allowance, just areas where the fabric is on the bias, so it's cut at an angle, like the A line of the skirt there, because that's cut on the bias, just to stop it from stretching out. So we're going to get piece C, which is your right there, right way around. Now this is your left skirt front, and then you want your piece F, which is your inside pocket, which is this one here. Okay, so we want to have interfaced onto the wrong side of the fabric your interfacing piece. I think it's piece R, pretty sure. Yeah, piece R of your interfacing piece, which fits exactly onto the inside of the pocket there. And then we are going to attach that to the skirt. So we are going to line that up like so. There. So right sides together, and we're going to just pin that in place along there. got a notch part way along, just to check that lines up there. It wants us to stitch a 1.6, I think. Yeah, 1.5, so a 16mm 5/8 of an inch seam allowance along that edge there, and then it wants us to just grade the seam slightly and clip into it. Then we're going to press it over to the other side and we will understitch it, which I can show you on the machine. Okay, so I'm going to go and stitch that first, 5/8 of an inch along there, and I'll show you how we grade it and clip it, and then I'll show you how we understitch it. Okay. Okay, so we've stitched along there. Okay, see that there? Just along that edge. And then we're going to grade the seam. So, which one am I going to cut? I'm going to cut the interfaced edge here. So I just want to cut this interfaced edge. Sort of take about half off it really. I'll show you when it's difficult to cut it and show you at the same time, but I'll just cut one down, about half the interface side, about half the distance, and the other one, and then I'm just going to clip. I don't know the inch apart it says, which is probably about right. It's not overly curved, it's got a very slight curve on it, so it's worth it just to get a nice neat finish. So then I've just clipped into the curves, into the curve there, very slight curve on it as I say, and then we're going to press that so the seam allowance underneath is going to sit to the pocket side. So I'll press that and then show you, and then we'll understitch it. Okay, so we've pressed that like so, so it looks like that on that side, and that's your seam allowance bit pressed over towards the pocket side. Okay, so it's pressed over towards this pocket side. So now we're just going to move it under the machine, and we're just going to stitch down just slightly to the pocket side, on the pocket side, catching your seam allowance underneath, just along this edge. Get close on that actually, there we go. So just about a couple of millimetres away if you can. Just a couple of back stitches to start with. Find the foot, because you haven't got your seam, so you haven't got your seam gauge to follow on your machine, so you just need to line up with something on your foot. So I'm just lining up the seam allowance just with the inside edge there on my foot, which just gives me a nice guide to follow along. So just find a bit on your foot that you can follow. Pockets on this, so you always need a pocket. There we go. So then that's just stitched down along there. You can see that on there, okay. Alright, so we'll then that will fold over there, so then as it folds over it naturally rolls that edge underneath, so it makes it nice and neat. Okay, so we'll go back downstairs now and I'll do the rest. Okay, so that's our pocket piece attached there. Okay, so then we just fold that over, fold your pocket over to the wrong side of your fabric. Okay, and then just give it a press so that you've got a nice neat finish along there, and then the pocket then, so that's how the pocket looks, like so. Okay, and then all you need, like so, just let me move that out, right, Okay, so that's like so with it pushed over to the wrong side, and then you just fold your pocket over. Now it's got a fold line piece marked on your pattern with a little notch at the top and the bottom. You can press that in place along there to help you, and then your lower edges of your pocket line up along the bottom. So you just want to pin your lower edges of your pocket, just the pocket edges together, so not to the skirt or anything. So just like so. Those edges together. Okay, so that's pinned just together at the bottom, not to the skirt. All right, so I'm just going to stitch that along there. Same seam allowance, yeah, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance along there, and then I'm going to finish the edge with the overlocker, or you could use a zigzag stitch, or you could French seam it if you wanted to, but I don't want too much bulk from a French seam or anything in this type of fabric. If it were a finer fabric, like a finer viscose or something like that, then I would definitely do a French seam. But here I'm just going to stitch it around and then overlock it, and then we're going to fix the pocket edges here, these pocket edges to the side seams, but I'll show you that next. Okay, so that's the pocket stitched and overlocked the edge. So now we just need to let's cut some of these threads off. Now we just need to baste it along the side seam. So I'm just going to turn that over to make sure that it lined up nicely. There's a notch there and a notch there to line up. Put that there, put a pin on the end there, keep that still. Okay, so that's that edge pinned down there. So this one, I was thinking whether that edge of the pocket has to line up with that notch, but it doesn't show that on this pattern, no. So it just lies so that it sits nice and flat. So the edge of your pocket does sit away from that notch, like so. Okay, and then it just sits nice and flat underneath. All right, so we're just going to baste that edge in place, just along there, just to make sure that that stays, you know, in place where it needs to be, and just down the side seam there. Okay, and then next I think we're going to put the facing to the front edge of the skirt. Okay. Okay, so that's the pocket edges there, just stitch down there, just to stitch those in place. Okay, so next it wants you to get piece H, which is the left front facing, which you should have interfaced there. Okay, and then it wants you to the shorter edge, so not the seam edge of the not the seam edge, but the other edge of the facing. So when you look at the piece, or it's easy to see on the pattern piece, it'll be the unnotched edge, so not the notched edge, this edge that's slightly shorter. Okay, this edge that's slightly shorter, so this side, and it wants you to fold that over 5/8 of an inch and press that over to the wrong side. Okay, so what it does advise you to do, and it is a good idea, to get that evenly spaced. If you just stitch a 1.5 centimetre seam edge just all the way down there with your sewing machine, then it gives you a nice point of where to stitch, where to press over that edge, and also it stops it pulling out of shape as well, so that's quite nice. So yeah, just press that over all the way down, okay, on there, and then we're going to fix that to the front of our left skirt. Put that at the top there. So we have got some notches along here, as I say, got them there. Line that one up and then we've got one there, so line that one up. So always pin it where your notches are, pin it at the top, and then we can pin it at the bottom. Now it doesn't come right to the bottom, that's intentional, because it allows for our hem, okay? So that's, you know, don't try and stretch it out to the bottom because it doesn't need to do that, it doesn't need to go right to the bottom. I'll show you that closer up in a minute. So I'll just put some pins in here to keep this nicely aligned. Okay, so it joins, matches at the top to join, but you do get a little gap at the bottom, which is just your seam allowance, which will turn up later. So it just wants us to stitch down the centre front here, 1.5 centimetres the same, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, 5/8 of an inch. And then we're going to grade the seam, press the seam allowance towards the facing and understitch it like we did before. So exactly the same way that we did the pocket, although we won't need to notch it because it's straight, but we will need to grade that down and then press the seam towards the facing part and then understitch it. So I'll show you that when I've done it, and then how we're going to secure the other part over to the right side, over to the wrong side. Okay, so that's our skirt front facing sewn on, and I've understitched it along the facing edge. Okay, so that's this side, just to show you close up, just slightly to the facing side of the seam, and then press that all over, so like that, and then just press that over to the wrong side of your skirt piece here. So I'm just going to pin that in place. Pins. Didn't go through right through. That's better. And then it wants you to stitch down the top stitch down the front here, and then we're going to do exactly the same thing with the fixing our facing to the right front. This is the left front. Pin those. Okay, so I'm just going to go and stitch along this edge here, all right, just to secure that facing down, and then that's our left front piece done. So then we will do the work on the right front piece next. Okay, so that's the facing sewn down of the left skirt front. Okay, so that's it, top stitched along there. See that okay? That's on the right side. So that's the left front skirt piece put together. I can show you. There we go. Okay, so that's got the skirt like that. Okay, so we'll put that to one side for a minute. And then we want piece D, which is the right front skirt, and piece I, which is the right front skirt facing. Okay, so piece D and I. So I'm going to put those to one side. Okay, this is the pin from the right side of my fabric. So piece I with the facing, again on the unnotched edge, just like before, on the unnotched edge, we want to stitch a 1.5 centimetre stitch mark down along that edge, and then you can use that as a guide to press under your 1.5 centimetres along that edge. We're going to put this piece against that edge, your front edge of your right skirt piece. So join them, it meets at the top, so join them there. and then it's got some notches part way down, so we'll match the notches up there. Got one there, I think there's another one somewhere, isn't there? So just the one on this piece. Oh, no, there's another one there. And then again down to the bottom. So again, it doesn't quite meet fully at the bottom, and that's intentional because you've got your hem allowance at the bottom there. So that's fine. Let's get those edges together. Okay, so I'm going to stitch down there 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, grade the seam just like we did for the other side, and then understitch it. So the seam allowance to the facing. Okay, so exactly like we did for the other side, and then top stitch it down again, exactly the same as the other side. So I'll do that, and then I'm guessing we're going to put the back pieces together. Right, so that's the right front. I think that's the right front piece done, the facing. So as I say, it's just done in exactly the same way as we do the left front. So I'm going to put that to one side as well with the other one. And next we need to join the centre back seam, the back pieces. So that's piece, we have two pieces of piece B. Okay, which is the back. I call it the side backs. There's just two side backs. So we are going to put it right sides together. At the moment I've got it wrong sides together, so let's just turn that round. Which I've got from my pins. So that one. Paper in it. Right sides together. I just know that from my pins, just because my fabric looks very similar both sides. So we're just going to pin that in place right down the centre back. Those bent ones need to be disposed of. Right, so pin it at the top, pin it at the bottom. Some notches at the bottom to line up as well. Notches along the back seam there, so I've got some notches to line up there. Okay, so just line it all up down the centre back seam. I always forget to check if it's in focus right. In view rather. Looks fine. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to stitch down that centre back seam. Now I'm not going to do French seams on this because I didn't want to create, it's not a thick fabric, but it's got a bit of substance to it, and I didn't want it to make a bulky seam down the back having lots of layers. So I'm going to stitch down 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, 5/8 an inch, and then I'm going to overlock down the edge and then press it towards the left, I think. Okay, so that's our seam stitched and then overlocked and then pressed towards the left. Okay, so that's the left as you would wear it. Okay, so that's the right side. Okay, and that's the wrong side. All right, so next we're going to put right sides together and sew our side seams. So we want that one that side. So just right sides together. I'm going to pin that in place. There's a notch down there which joins up. Should join up, yeah, that's fine. There. There's another notch down here, so that joins up there. So as I say, join your notches and then you can sort of even it up and pin in between. Check you've got it nice and even and positioned properly. This time your hems will line up at the bottom. Put one there. Oh, my pins are stuck in the pin cushion. Okay, so that's that one there. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other side. So right sides together. Oh, this is the side with your pocket on. So right sides together. Pin that at the top first. Line up your notches there. Just make sure it's all sat nice and flat. So I would definitely put a pin where your pocket edge joins there to keep that sat nice and flat. Do that top bit and then line up the bottom. A notch at the bottom as well. Got a notch there. Both pieces to align. So I'm going to stitch both these side seams with a 1.5cm seam allowance. As I say, it does say you can French seam for this, but I decided not to because of my fabric. If I was using a much more lighter weight fabric like a viscose or a crepe or something like that, then I would definitely French seam it. But with this fabric, I decided it's best not to. Just added layering of the seam would just make it a bit more bulky. So I'm going to stitch 1.5cm seam allowance down both of those, then I'll overlock the seams and then I'm going to press them towards the back. Okay, and then next it will be the waistband, which I will have to do later as I've got a class this afternoon, a dressmaking class this afternoon that I teach, so here in the studio, so I will perhaps do that this evening, if not then tomorrow. Okay. Okay, so apologies if you can hear a lawnmower going in the background. Yeah, someone's cutting some grass locally, so my neighbours. So anyway, hopefully you can still hear me okay. So this is the skirt. We've sewn the back seam and then we've sewed the side seams together here. So they're all, that's one side, the back, and there. And I've overlocked them and then pressed them towards the back. The back piece gets pressed towards the left. So that's our skirt, wrap skirt assembled all in one. Just turn that way. So then next is to do the waistband. So 1, 2, so go like that. Okay. Wrap over like that. Okay. So next is the waistband. So then the waistband piece is, now it wants you to interface half of the waistband and you need to interface the, I've done it the wrong way around, you need to interface the notched edge of the waistband. So you need to interface this edge that's the notched edge along that side, okay, of each of your waistband pieces. Then you're going to join them together at the centre back seam, which is there on each piece, notched with a double notch in the back there. Okay, so you're going to join that together at 1.5 centimetres and press the seam open, and then the non-interfaced edge, you're going to fold it in half initially, like so. Okay, fold it in half like that, and then you're going to do a stay stitch 1.3 centimetres along your non-interfaced edge and press that up like so all the way around. Okay, so it'll end up looking like that. Okay, now then it wants you to put your interface side of your waistband to the right side of your skirt. Now, because I've interfaced the wrong edge, I'm going to attach it to the inside of my waistband and then fold it over, which is fine, but in the pattern it does say attach it to the right side. Okay, so I'm going to put that on there. Okay, so then your notch along here will join your side seam. This one I join at the end. We'll join that notch. So on each side of your waistband you'll have a notch that the side seam joins. Okay, so then we can pin in between those. Stretch it, even with a stay stitch. You can see why you stay stitch, because even with a stay stitch my waistband is stretched a wee bit. I can ease that in, that's fine. Okay. And then line this front section here. So as I say, if you look at that there, you see I have got a little bit of ease compared to the waistband. So if you just lay it nice and flat, find roughly the middle, pin that in place, and then you can just ease that in. So it just shows you how important the stay stitching is, because even with that it's slightly moved. It's just my fabric viscose blends, so obviously with the weave. Right. Okay, so that's that side done. Just do this side. So as you say, there with the pocket as well, that's pulling that down. So we're just going to set that up here in the middle. There. I do actually prefer doing the waistband this way round anyway, so that's good in a way. I just find you get a neater finishing it along the edge. Like that. I'm going to pin that there, just see that that stays put. Pin that down there, just to hold that in place in alignment there. we're going to stitch this. I think it's still a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. Just have a look. I'll have to look in a minute. Can't pin and read at the same time. I'll fit in this. The thing it does say is when aligning this edge here, you just need to make sure that you align it with the top, but you're thinking about where your, it's a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, so you just want to make sure that you've got your, where it says 1.5, I'm slightly under there, but that'll be enough to do my seam, seam allowance there, okay, at the edge there. So you want to make sure you've still got some seam allowance on the end there, so that you can attach your waistband, like so in a minute, okay, because we need to be able to stitch down there. All right, so I'm going to go and put that, stitch all that in place, 1.5 centimetres, and then we're going to press it up towards the waistband, and then I'll show you how we'll sew the ends of the waistband. Okay, so that's all stitched on, okay, all around the waistband edge there. Just take it really steady in because it is a curve, so just make sure you don't get any pucker. Then it wants you to grade your seam allowance. Okay, I haven't bothered to clip into it because mine sits quite nice and flat. If your fabric's thicker, you might need to snip into it slightly just so that it curves in. So with the seam pressed up towards the waistband, then we're gonna do the ends. So we just need to fold the waistband right sides together, turn up the edge, this edge here, that's going to be on the inside, so you've got it looking like that, okay, and then pin that in place. I'll show you on the other side. Easy, there it is. So just fold, put your seam allowance like that, and then you're just going to fold it back like that, fold back your seam allowance bit, and then pin that in place. Just like that there. Okay, so that's that on that side, and that's on that side, and then we're literally just going to stitch down here, okay, just so that we finish those ends off. All right, and then we can turn them in the other way, and then we'll turn the waistband over to sit to the right side, and then we'll stitch along there. I'll top stitch, but you'll be stitching in the ditch, but I can show you how I top stitch to do it that way around. Okay, so we'll stitch those ends first. Okay, so I'll bring you over to the ironing board now just to show you how I turn these ends out and press that under. So you can snip off that corner, but it's quite fine fabric, so sometimes it can help. If you leave it in, it can help give some support to that corner. And this fabric, I think it's fine. Just poke it out to make sure you've got a nice sharp corner. Now here you've got quite a lot of sort of bulk to try and wrap around there, so sometimes you can just trim off a bit of one of these corners. So that interfaced edge there, I'm just going to trim that point of that corner off a bit, which just gives a little bit more ease to pull that round, so it's not quite so bulky in that corner. Oops, not got the corner out right now. That's better, right. So, and then we wrap that round there, and then one pin, not two, pin that in place under there. So I'm pinning it to the edge there and just putting it through the ditch of the seam on the back there. Okay, so I'll do another one here and show you what I do. So let's get you stitched. So this is where the stitch seam was, the to where our fold was for the waistband. In there, so right to the edge, and there, so it goes through there. So this is my right side and this is my wrong side. Yours may well be the other way around, depending on which way you do your waistband. So if you were doing it the other way round, you would then just stitch in the ditch from the other side, but I'm just going to top stitch all the way around this, right next to the edge there, all the way around here. It's a nice option if you don't like the stitch in the ditch thing. So open those there, tuck those threads underneath, just find my stitch line, match that up. Just like so. There. A bit of a curve there, so I'm going to put an extra couple in between there, just so that you know it stays and sits nicely on that edge. Just this, because there's quite a bit of a curve on that bit there. I might just put another one in where that pocket edge is. So, okay, and then I just give that a press with the iron. So I've got just metal pins in, so you can iron over those, or if you've got the glass-headed pins, they're also fine to iron over, so that's helpful. But you shouldn't iron over the plastic-headed pins because they might melt onto your fabric, so yeah, you don't want to ruin your garment at this stage. Okay, so that's all pinned in place, so I'll take the camera upstairs and we'll stitch along there all the way round. And then I think I've decided to do the buttonholes, not the loop ends. So I'm going to then stitch my buttonholes, I think, so I can show you that as well, if you like. That's if my machine will behave. It needs to go for a service, so hopefully that'll be the case. So I'll take you upstairs now. Okay, so I've just back stitched there, okay, and I'm literally just going round, just so I am stitching, top stitching around the edge. So this is the right side of my skirt. The instructions do say to do it the other way, and then you would stitch in the ditch of the seam along there, okay, which I've shown on a previous video, so you could always watch that there. So I'm just going to stitch around the edge here, so I'm just lining up my foot. That's pretty good. So I'm just the fabric just sort of to this side of the seam, to the just to this side, the edge of the foot. So just find a placement on your foot really to line it to, and then you can just follow that round and just let that guide you. Sometimes difficult on a darker fabric because it's difficult to see that edge sometimes, but that's fine. Get to this bit with your pocket, just make sure that your pocket's kept out the way. And some people do so over pins. I prefer not to. Okay, so the camera obviously dropped down, but hopefully you'll get some more. See, I need to edit this. You just had a picture of my lap. Which is not very interesting, is it? Okay, so I'll just sort out threading the other machine up for the buttonhole. Okay, so just before I switch over to my other machine, thread over to my other machine, I thought I'd do the hem. So I have wrapped it round to check for fit and things and the length. So I'm happy with that. Oops, get rid of that thread. So then I'm just gonna sew the hem now. So in the instructions it says to fold it under 1/4 inch and then fold it over another 1/4 inch. So giving you a really fine hem like that. I didn't want to add too much bulk to the seam, so I prefer to, I've just overlocked the edge. You could bind the seam if you wanted to, or you can turn it as they suggest, but I've decided to overlock mine and turn it up the 1/2 inch all the way around. So that just gives me a nice flat and doesn't affect the fluidity of the hem. Obviously if you've got more layers tucked over, then it's a bit more rigid, and as it's that sort of quite fluidy skirt, I wanted to keep that sort of drape of the fabric really. So I've overlocked the edge, and then I did stitch around like a stay stitch around 1/2 inch around, and then that gives you a nice point to turn it up from. So there's my stitched edge there, which will just follow along the bottom of that hem, and it just keeps it nice and stable as well to sew it. Stops it stretching out a bit as well. So yeah, and then it makes it nice and easy to turn it up, checking you've got a nice straight curve along there. So we're going to stitch this now. So I'm going to top stitch it from the right side. So I'm just going to see where that's going to sit. So I think I'm about, coming a bit about there. So should be fine there. Yeah, I've got a stitch length, just up the stitch length slightly to a 3. Same as I did around the waistband really. Thought if I was going to need to change my thread to the other machine, I will do the hem on this one, so I'll do this first. long hem. So are you a speedy sewer or do you take your time? I think sewing's a very mindful thing, and I think it's good to take your time, not feel rushed. Yeah, because that's what it's all about really, isn't it? I know sometimes we want to get things finished, but yeah, it's a very mindful thing. I believe it's really good for you. Pins come out. Oh, excuse me. Thread tucked in if I can. There we go. Trim those threads off. Okay, so that's the hem done. I'll give that a press. Okay, so always do a test one first before you start. So you just put your button, mine's got an automated buttonhole foot, so you just put your button in there. Oops, oh, I can't get it right. There we go. Put your button in there. Squeeze that so it's nice and tight. And put your buttonhole foot back on your machine. Obviously every machine is different, but you usually have it with an automated buttonhole foot. You'll have a little, okay, so you have a lever here that comes down there, okay. And then the main thing is with your buttonholes and the automated foot is that you want to make sure that you've got plenty of room behind, so nothing's going to stop it moving backwards. So once you've tested and you know how your buttonhole foot works, most of them go backwards, mine does go backwards. So I've got a pin in there marking where I want it. I'm just going to put that in, my needle down right where my pin head is. Ooh, and then get the pin out if it doesn't get stuck somewhere. There it is. Okay. And then put the foot plate down. Now you want to make sure you've got nothing that's going to, you want to make sure you've got a good free run, nothing behind that's going to stop it going. Okay, and then just start the buttonhole. So I'm not moving the fabric with my fingers, I'm just making sure, just in case it does stop to run, you just want to make sure it keeps moving. If it stops moving, gets stuck by anything, then that's when it thinks it's finished your buttonhole. So, as I say, mine does go backwards first and then forwards. That's good. And so I'll position the next one. So I want to line up my needle where it wants to go, roughly there. Take my pin out. Plate down. Make sure I've got everything lined up. I think I'm quite straight. That's about it there, I think. Okay, and then off we go again. As I say, just ensure it does keep moving. If it gets stuck and starts stitching in one place, then that's when it thinks it's finished. And it's kind of game over, really. Oops, I've got to snip my threads. There we go. Okay, so that's my buttonholes sewn. All right, so we'll just open up those buttonholes. Okay, so I've just given the hem a press and I've just given the waistband a good press after stitching it. Okay, so now we just want to open up these buttonholes on the end. So I prefer to use a buttonhole chisel. So I always put a little bit of fray stop, well, usually put a little bit of fray stop along there. And then just with the chisel, can you see? Yeah. Just with the chisel, buttonhole chisel, just line it up. Just make sure you've got something underneath. You don't mark your dining room table or something drastic. There we go, and that's your buttonhole open. So we just do the other one. So as I say, I always put a little bit of fray stop on first. I just think then as you're cutting it, you cut it when it's wet, and it just helps to push them through to the fibres. Just makes sense, really. So line that up inside your button. I can see properly. There. There we go. Okay, so that's those done. Make sure you haven't got any glue left on your buttonhole cutter. Okay, so then your next will be to put the buttons on. So I just need to check where I want those buttons to be to try it on, because it's a wrap, so that does help with the fit. There. Okay, so I want one roughly there and one roughly there. I'm going to check how that fits first around me, and then sew those on, and then I'll get some photos of me wearing it. Okay. Okay, so this month we made the Fiore Skirt, my closet core patterns. I made the wrap version, and it's got a it is a proper wrap. It's got a pocket in, yeah, made in our viscose linen fabric, which has got a lovely drape to it. And here's my other cat for this month. Thank you.